It is 97 degrees. If you guys work in the heat, there's a tip. Take a white t-shirt, soak it down in water about every half an hour while you're working, wrap it around your head, put your hard hat on your t-shirt, and you can keep going. Otherwise, you'll die in this heat. Oh, 98 degrees. So I've always enjoyed being in the trees. For as long as I can remember. When I was a little kid, I think I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, I was climbing the trees in our backyard. And I can even remember them to this day. There was a big willow tree back there, and there were 3 poplars. And I used to climb up as high as I could go on the poplar trees. And I'd look around the neighborhood, and I really enjoyed being up in the tree. And then when I was about 10 years old, my father bought a ranch out in Gilroy. It was a 10-acre ranch. And at the front of the ranch property, there was this big valley oak. And my brother and I built a small tree house up there. And when I was about 11 years old, I pounded a railroad spike into the base of the tree as the first step of the ladder to get up into the tree. My dad came out and he got quite angry at me and he yelled at me. He says, "Don't do that, you'll kill the tree." Well, I didn't take the railroad spike out. I couldn't get it out. And let's go forward. My father lost the ranch in the late 60s. He had some health issues, and about 10 years ago, actually about 12 years ago, my father passed away. And my brother and I went down to collect his belongings and get his ashes, and we were driving back up from Southern California where he lived, and we went by where the ranch was, and we were talking about the ranch. And Brian says to me, he says, "You think we could still find the ranch?" And I said, "Well, let's give it a try." So we just went by memory from where we thought it was, and we went out there, and it was all developed. There was houses everywhere. And right where the ranch was, we stopped, and that tree was still there. And I went walking outside, and there was that railroad spike. So I knew that was where it was at. About this time, this old guy comes walking out, and he says, "Can I help you?" And we said, "Well, we used to live here." And he says, "Oh, well, come on over." And we said, "Yeah, the old farmhouse used to be here." He says, "Yeah, I had to tear that farmhouse down, but I recycled the redwood. Matter of fact, see that front door? That's built from your old house." And that was pretty cool. So we talked to the old guy for a while, and we were talking about how we had a big vegetable garden, and my dad would just go turn on the well. And he says, "Well?" He says, "Yeah, we had a well." He says, "Do you think you can find it?" I said, "Well, let's go look." So we went out in the back of his property, and we're going around. There was this big pile of trash, and I dug through it, and sure enough, I found the guy's well. He goes, "I've got a well!" Anyway, moral of that story is I've been climbing trees since I was really little. I'm 70 years old now, and damn it, I think I'm going to probably die in a tree. It almost seems appropriate. I mean, come on, man. I spent my life in the trees. I've had so many close calls, but now that I'm older, I think I'm more wise and more observant, and I see things a little bit more clearly. So those close call situations just don't happen quite as often. So this job, I've actually got 3 fairly large valley oaks, Quercus lobata. And once again, this is a very common tree in our area. And at one time, they were everywhere. And then the houses came in, and one by one, they got built around, and slowly they're dying off. Here we've got 2 trees side by side. And as you can see, one tree is growing to the left and the other tree is growing to the right. And I wanted to point out these little base units here that probably the developer did back in the 70s, I'm guessing 70s. He put these boards up around the base of the tree so that when he did all of his excavating and pushing of the dirt around, he wouldn't bury the trunks. And that was smart, but adding fill on top of a root zone is absolutely wrong, because it creates a condition known as compaction. So what is compaction, you ask? Well, when you have a soil that has the weight of an additional layer or layers of soil put on top of the original soil, it basically squeezes the life out of the soil. It doesn't allow for exchange of oxygen through the soil and kind of creates more of a dead zone. So I know a lot of trees will survive under these conditions, but they don't usually thrive, and it's usually associated with other issues. Now, we often have to work around different obstacles, and this obstacle was a little bit difficult. These two chickens, they're pet chickens, and they love these chickens, and everything that was on top of this, above this chicken coop, was scaring the hell out of these darn birds. So we started working. We had a couple small pieces bang the top, and oh, they love these chickens so much. They made these little heart-shaped rocks going up to these cute little guys here. Girls, I'm sorry, hens. They had a leak in the backyard, and it created this little interesting pond, and I was looking to see where the water was flowing. Obviously, it was underneath all these pipes, but that needs to be corrected. So here is the first of the two trees that we worked on. This one was over near the front yard, and there was also a big camphor tree in the front yard. It was loaded with dead branches, and we got the majority of the dead branches out. This is the second tree here, and this is what it looks like when we just get started. Everywhere you look, there's dead and dying branches. Little splits that are happening, little problems everywhere. So my job is to take out just the dead wood, as much of the dead wood as I possibly can get. And a lot of these branches were half dead and half alive. And if you look at some of these branches, it looks like I'm leaving stubs. Well, I guess I kind of am. I'm stubbing off the branches because there's still some life on them. Oh, this is cool. These are leaf galls, and they look like little stars. I've only seen these on valley oaks. I've never seen them on any other type of oak tree. Maybe you guys have seen them on your trees where you live. They're quite beautiful. They don't seem to do much damage to the tree because it's a deciduous tree, so any leaf gall falls off. You know, galls are interesting little things. There was another time that I ran into a gall that was associated with an insect. It was called a jumping gall, and it was under an oak tree. It was a live oak tree, and the ground looked like it was alive. It was covered with millions of these little tiny BB-sized galls, and each one had a little larva inside, and they were bouncing around. They were jumping. It was crazy. I've only seen that once. Those chickens are not happy. So we talked to the customer, and she said, let's just let them out. And they ran around the yard. Had to keep shooing them back. There's one of those stubs that I cut. I'm trying to leave as much green on this tree as I possibly can. It needs as much foliage as it's got to survive. There's a stub that I cut off, and I wanted to show you the stub. That what looks like on the outside. That stub was left there from a long time ago. Now let's flip it over and see what that stub evolved into. A big pocket of decay, and that decay led down into the main part of the branch. So there's a moral to that story. If you leave stubs, a lot of times the decay will go past the area of its ability to compartmentalize the wound, and the decay goes beyond the branch itself. Here's a spot where there was an old rotted piece, and I'm trying to get it down to where the active cambium tissue is. I don't want to cut into that new active tissue, but I got as close as I possibly could, and hopefully that'll surround and encapsulate that wound somewhat. But you can see all these big dead limbs everywhere you look. That's the first day's trim. It came out looking pretty good. We got a lot of dead out of that tree. That one is the healthiest of the three. And here's the second one. We're not quite done. We're probably about 2/3 of the way done here, but it's starting to look a lot better. Here's an example of what I was seeing throughout the whole tree. Lots of twigs were partially dead and partially alive. So I cut into this one, and you can see the dieback on the inside. I'm not sure if that's associated with an insect or some kind of a disease, possibly twig dieback of some sort. I need to investigate that one a little bit further. This is what they look like at the end. I often will show images of all the dead stuff I take out of the tree, because when the client gets home at the end of the day, if they don't see what we did, they oftentimes don't appreciate it. So I take pictures and say, okay, this is how much we took out of that tree. That last pile there was just out of one tree, the last of the trees.